Well, folks, we're actually in part 4 of a message series called Selfless. And if you were here the previous weeks, you remember in week 1, we talked about how we need to be selfless when we're talking about Jesus, because so many times when we talk about Jesus, we get a little afraid of things. And so we need to be selfless, think more about him than we do ourselves. In the second week, we talked about being extravagant and generosity. There is no better way to prove how selfless you are than by how you give. And then last week, we talked about being selfless in service. Now today, I want to talk about a phrase that may sound a bit odd at first, but I think by the end of the message this morning, you'll understand what I'm trying to say. But we need to be selfless and grateful in the grind. Grateful in the grind. Let me introduce you to this idea. I'm guessing that probably a lot of you will be able to relate to this on one level or another. For much of my life, I've lived under the illusion that there's something better around the corner. Can you relate? There's something better out there. And it's coming. And it really matters. And it matters more than what I'm doing right now. And it's that thing that I desire. It's that event that I was looking for. It was that whatever something that was going to bring meaning and fulfillment and give me that significant moment that I've been looking for. It was never here. It was always out there. Let me give you an example of how this played out in my life. And I'm going to guess many of you will relate to this fairly well, but for me, it's found in the area of ministry. I graduated from Kentucky Christian University, and I was so excited I was going into full-time ministry, and I was going to conquer the world. It wasn't what I thought. And then I thought, well, you know what? What'll really fulfill me is when I get married. So Joan and I got married. I loved my wife dearly. I still love my wife dearly. But that didn't work either. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, it's when our first baby comes and we become a family. That's when I'll be fulfilled. That will be the amazing moment in my life. Well, we had the baby. And it was incredible. And then my next thought was, I can't wait till she's out of diapers. Right? That's the next thing that I waited for. And then they start growing up. They go off to college. And then they graduate from college. You know what? When they graduate from college, then we got to eat again. But that's what it's like. There's always something around the corner. And in my mind, I was always saying there was something missing. And I couldn't figure it out. When then? When then? And what I did is I found that whatever season I was in, I was wishing that season away. Just waiting for the next one to come. One day, just around the corner, right? There'll be that something. There'll be that achievement. There'll be that accomplishment. There'll be that friendship. There'll be that possession. There'll be that vacation. There will be something that fills the emptiness that I have on the inside. But around every corner, there was just another challenge. There's another goal. Another vision, another dream, another perceived prize. Folks, I've lived long enough now to kind of look back and to see the real weakness that I had in my life in those younger years. And it's because I was pursuing what I wanted. My dreams, my passions, my goals. And whatever it is that was there, there's got to be something out there better than what I have right now. And what does our culture do for that? Can I say it's a smorgasbord? Because you can go to that counter and you can eat everything that they throw out. Because culture completely and totally feeds that mindset. With every commercial and every advertisement, everything you see on social media, it's all just says, gratify yourself. Indulge yourself. Get whatever you want because you deserve it. Treat yourself right. The one I like is the L'Oreal. Anybody remember this one? Because I'm worth it. Oh, that's it. But here's the problem. The problem is that if you want to follow Jesus, that's not the life. Jesus says in Luke chapter 9 and verse 23, he says, if you want to follow me, you don't treat yourself. He said this. He said, deny yourself. Deny yourself. If you want to be my disciple, listen, don't indulge yourself. You deny yourself. And then he said this, take up your cross daily. Now, folks, that's just a metaphor. That's just a picture that we're to actually die to our own fleshly desires so that we can live in his Spirit. And then he said this, then you follow me. We have to deny ourselves so that we can then follow him. Now, there's a verse that I want to look at today that's going to be the anchor verse that we talk about for this message. And it's from the Apostle Paul, and we're going to talk a lot about the Apostle Paul today. But he says this in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 31. He says, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, say that out loud with me, whatever you do. I'm a little deaf this morning. Again? Thank you. Whatever you do, he said, do it all for the glory of God. Whatever you do, whether you're doing laundry, you're picking up the kids from their events, you're running errands for your boss, you're doing something that seems like no big deal at all, whatever you do it for the glory of God. And this is transparent Sunday, if you will, because when I look at so much of my life, and when I'm just really honest, whatever I do is mostly for me. I want to do what makes me happy. I want to do what makes me feel good. I want to do what fulfills my dreams. I want to do what fulfills my wants and my desires. I want to do what I want to do. Now, doesn't that sound like a 2-year-old? It sounds like a 2-year-old. But folks, even as adults, that's how we respond so many times. I want to do what I want to do. I want to gratify myself. But Jesus said, deny yourself. Whatever you do, to really have meaning in life, you do it for the glory of God. And here's what I'm beginning to recognize in my life. And here's a truth that I want you to write it on your hearts. I want you to write it in that magic marker that don't erase. You ready? Here's the truth. The prize is in what you do daily when you do it for the glory of God. The prize isn't what you accomplish occasionally. The prize is what you do and what you do daily when you do it for the glory of God. I want to ask you 3 questions today. And as we go through this message, these 3 questions are actually going to turn into statements. Okay? So the questions are this. What if the work is the reward? What if the work is the reward? Secondly, what if the process is the prize? And thirdly, what if you can be grateful in the grind? What if, whatever you do, you can find meaning and fulfillment and divine satisfaction when you do it all for the glory of God? Let me show you another text from the Apostle Paul, found in 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 9. So what Paul says, Paul's being very transparent today with this, being a little bit vulnerable. He says, for I am the least of the apostles, and do not even deserve to be called an apostle because I persecuted the church of God. In other words, before I was a Jesus follower, I was really, really, really bad. Right? I hated Christians, so much so that I killed them. But then he says this, he says, but. Everybody say that with me. Say, but. Now that's with 1 T, okay? If you're watching us online today, type that in the area there that you can type that and just put 1 T, please. But he says, but by the grace of God, I am what I am, and his grace to me was not without effect. This is my story. But by the grace of God, I am what I am, because his grace to me was not without effect. Can I just say that for many of us, that's our story too? We weren't always good, were we? Okay. Am I the only one that wasn't always good? No, we weren't always good, were we? There were times that we weren't that way. We weren't always faithful. We weren't always righteous. But by the grace of God, you now are, you're not what you were, but you're yet not what He's going to have you be. We are still in process. We're becoming who He wants us to be because His grace is not without effect. But can I just share something very sad? In churches all across our country, including this one, there are some people, even here today, that His grace has been without effect because it hadn't touched your heart yet. Today that needs to change. His grace needs to touch your heart. It needs to do to you what it did to Brent. It needs to bring you to your knees to understand who He is and what He's done, because it's by the grace of God I am who I am. Paul goes on to say this, and I love what he says here in 1 Corinthians 15, 10, in the latter part of that verse, 10b, he says, no, I worked harder than all of them. I am what I am by the grace of God. And I worked harder than any of the rest of them. And he says this, yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me. What did he just say? He said, I wasn't any good, but the grace of God transformed me. And because of that transformation and because of who Jesus is and what Jesus did, I work hard. I work hard. I worked harder than the rest of them. Now listen, I don't think Paul's bragging here. I don't think what it is. I think he's just making a statement. Because he says it wasn't me doing the work. It was the grace of God through him doing what he was called to do. The grace of God. I worked hard. I've been so transformed by Jesus because of who he was and what he did. I just got to work. That's what Paul says. Whatever I did, I was doing all for his glory. I can't even begin to imagine the depths of sacrifices the Apostle Paul made. I just can't imagine that. In fact, I'd give anything if I could go back in time and sit with the Apostle Paul. Just like, hey, bro, it's just you and me. Let's sit down here. Let's sit down around your little campfire here, and Paul will be drinking his glass of wine, and I'll be drinking my water because I don't like wine. And we're just sitting there, and we're going to talk. We're going to have a conversation, just mano a mano. And I'm like, Paul, this verse right here, unpack this for me. What do you mean you worked harder than anybody else? You know, it's just guy to guy here. It's follower of Jesus to follower of Jesus. So what do you mean you worked harder? And I can imagine him saying something like, well, okay, I'm not bragging here, but while other people went to bed, I stayed up a little longer and prayed and strategized. I got up a little earlier and got into the office because I really wanted to make sure I got things right for God. You see, when most people desired comfort, Paul says, I realized that following Jesus was not going to be comfortable. He'd be looking at me in the eye and he'd say, I was beaten, right? But I had to go on. Do you remember that I was shipwrecked? What do? You just keep moving. One time I was bitten by a poisonous snake, and boy, I didn't like that. But yet, I just kept moving. I shook it off. It's just like he's telling his story. While others took a shortcut, Paul says, I always tried to do the right thing. I can just see it, can't you? With the Apostle Paul, he's saying, I memorized so much of God's word. I hid it in my heart. I let it renew my mind. I focused on his word. And I think when you look objectively and you step back and you see this scenario, what you find is that Paul was not wishing the current season away. Wherever he was all there. Whatever he did, he was doing for the glory of God. When he was in prison, listen, he didn't say, well, one day when I finally get out of prison, I'm going to do da. No, he didn't do that. He just said, whatever you do, I'm going to do it for the glory of God. He said, if there's someone chained up to me, guess what? They're going to hear about Jesus. And while I'm sitting here in prison, I got these friends over in Philippi. They need a word from God. I'm going to write them a letter. He didn't wait till he was out of prison to do ministry. He did it while he was there. And when he's sitting there, he's saying, I'm not going to get bitter because it's a waste of time. Whenever Barnabas left him and he turned on him, he wouldn't go with Paul. Here's what Steve would have done. I can't take it anymore, right? Christians, you can't trust any of them, right? That would be me, but that wasn't Paul. Barnabas probably yelled, I left the Sunday school class because you hurt my feelings. Paul's saying, grow up and move on, right? I don't have time for this. We got work to do. Because I'm doing it all for the glory of God. Now, I don't know how this would apply to you. But if you're changing diapers, do it for the glory of God. If you're making sales calls, do it for the glory of God. If you're doing laundry, do it for the glory of God. If you're doing something for your boss, do it for the glory of God. You just got to say, in this moment, at this time, even though this doesn't seem incredibly sexy here, I'm going to do it for the glory of God. I'm going to do it with integrity. I'm going to do it with purity of heart. And I'm going to do it with the heart of a servant. And I'm declaring that this task is now for the glory of God. And listen, when you live this way, you suddenly wake up and you start to realize that maybe the work is the reward. The work is the reward. The process is the prize. And everyday life, when you're grinding it out, doing just normal things, you can say, I can be grateful in the midst of this. I can be grateful in the middle of the grind. But it's not so easy. As a matter of fact, I want to share with you 3 enemies. 3 enemies that I call the enemies of the true reward. And unfortunately, some of these enemies are going to sound very familiar. These are the enemies of the true reward. The first one's this: the pillow. How many of you like your pillow? My wife loves her pillow so much she will not leave home without it. We get in the car, the pillow's up on the window, she's gone. Right? We love that pillow. But the pillow that I'm referring to is the seduction of comfort. Don't you just love to be comfortable? Don't you just love to sit in your recliner, kick the feet up, watch Disney, watch Aladdin for the 15th time, and just be comfortable? We all love comfort. And that is what the pillow represents. It's the seduction of comfort. And I don't know how it plays in your life, but at some point, you may be thinking, my house isn't quite what I want it to be. I don't have walk-in closets. I need walk-in closets. I don't have granite countertops. I need granite countertops. What else would I need in my house so that I would feel like it's my house? How about a gas stove rather than electric? Yeah? How about a 3-car garage? Maybe heated tiles on the bathroom floor. Oh, I would love that. But all of those things I just mentioned are a pillow. They're so that I will be more comfortable. Some of it's the house, some of it's maybe the car, right? Years ago, you know what I needed? I needed windows in a car where I would do this, and it goes down. Because the cars that I drove were like this, right? So I needed to push the button. I needed that comfort. Oh, the windows weren't enough, though. You know what I needed next? I need a sunroof. You know? Although I got to tell you, a friend of mine just posted on Facebook yesterday, it'd be a good thing to close your sunroof before you go through the car wash. Yes, it would. I won't mention any names, but if you ask me later, I might tell you. But if I had all of that, then I would be happy. Then I would be around the corner. I would not just be here, but I would be there, always looking for something else to make me happy. You know, some of you think, well, if I was the boss, I'd be happy. But here's where most of us are. And let's be honest today. If I had enough money, I would be happy. Right? If I had enough money so that life would be easy, then I would be happy. Let me give you a little secret today, directly from God. God never called us to easy. He never called us to easy. He called us to deny ourselves. Because listen, easy never changed the world. Easy never made any changes. And yet that pillow, whatever that pillow is in your life, is crying out, get comfortable. And I can just picture God sitting on his throne saying, don't you dare get comfortable. You know, that's what it's like. Here's number 2. It's the distraction of what I want to call the shiny thing. You know what a shiny thing is? It's the allure of constant distractions. You know, it's important. Bing! Right? You get a bing, oh my gosh, I wonder what she just posted on Facebook. And so I open up Facebook, and the next thing you know, I'm on there for 25 minutes. Right? Or you turn a show on Netflix, and you're just going to watch a show, and you sit down to watch a show, and that little box at the corner comes up and says, this is what's next. And it says there'll be a 99% chance you'll like that show. That must be God calling right there. Right? Because it's 99% chance I'm going to like it. So that must be from God. And that's what we do. It's the allure that we have because we're so distracted. We overprogram our kids because we're over distracted. I gotta have little Johnny. He's got to be in that elite travel soccer league. Because if he's going to get a D1 scholarship in the NCAA, he needs to start now. It doesn't matter he's only 3 years old. We got distractions. And it's the shiny thing. You know, it's like, have you ever seen that picture where the donkey has the carrot hanging in front of him? Does he ever get the carrot? That's what distractions do. They will keep you from getting the prize. They're an enemy to what God's called us to be. Here's the third. The third enemy is the towel. Now, last week we talked about the towel and the importance of having a towel to be a servant. This week is completely different. We're talking about throwing in the towel. You know where that comes from, right? From boxing. When your guy was getting beat up too bad, you took a towel and you threw it in the ring so they stopped the fight. And that's the way it is. It's the perpetual temptation to quit. Throw it in. When your marriage gets difficult, I'm not in love anymore. This isn't worth it. Throw in the towel. Trying to get finances together? Trying to get out of debt? Oh my gosh, we just got an unexpected bill. Well, since we got that unexpected bill, let's go out to dinner. Let's go shop for a new dress. We throw in the towel. I can tell you how many times that I've heard this version with folks who say, well, I tried God. I went to church twice. You know, I read my Bible for a whole day. But you know, when I went to that church, those people were mean. I didn't like it. I couldn't get a good parking space. Forget it. I'm out of here. I'm throwing in the towel. Listen, here, you can throw in the towel, or you can pick up that towel, and you can wipe the sweat from your brow and from your face and get back to work. but it's a choice that we make. And we do it for the glory of God. That's when we wipe our face. And suddenly you begin to realize that the work is the reward, and the prize is in the process. And the fact that you can be grateful every single day in the grind. There is no higher calling. Because it's not selfish passion, but it's a selfless purpose. So instead of thinking that I'm the starting point, right? This is what I want to do to be happy, then God needs to be the starting point. And whatever you do it for the glory of God. And when you're serving His purpose, your passion starts to follow. Think about Paul for a minute. Paul was a passionate guy. I mean, he was a regular guy. We have passions, right? We have desires. We have things we want to do. But I'll promise you, I'll guarantee you that he wasn't passionate about certain things. He wasn't passionate about being beaten, right? He was left for dead. He wasn't passionate about that. That was never his, if I could only do that, I'd be so happy. That's not what he was thinking. But instead of pursuing selfish, self-centered passion, what he did was pursued God's purpose. And when he was pursuing God's purpose, he could say things like this in Acts chapter 20, verse 24. Incredible statement. He says, I consider my life worth nothing to me. Think about that. None of my dreams, none of my wants. And he says, my only aim is to finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus has given me. We can say this, my only dream is to fulfill God's purpose. And then what is that purpose? It's right here. The task of testifying to the good news and the grace of God. That's the purpose. And when we have a purpose, it does help us feel passionate about ordinary things. Something mundane, something ordinary starts to take on meaning. Whatever I do, even if it's boring, even if it feels insignificant, I'm going to be doing it today for the glory of God. Some of you may have experienced that this week. You may have been fixing a cup of coffee for somebody at your dining room table, and you just were very joyful about being able to fix a cup of coffee for somebody. Right? It doesn't take much. That we need to find and fulfill the purpose. Or here's one. If you want to find if you're truly grateful in the grind, go sit in a 2-year-old classroom with all them screaming 2-year-olds. Yeah, then we'll see if you're grateful in the grind. But that's what's needed. That's the things that we need to do. See, what seems ordinary becomes extraordinary because it's not the task that we're looking at. It's the purpose that God directed us to. And when we follow that purpose, the passion always follows. Paul gives us a real profound image here in 1 Corinthians 9:26. He says this, therefore I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I just think you ought to stop that verse, that therefore I do not run. That's where I'd stop it. I do not run like someone, I love that image. He's running in a direction. He's given a direction to go. He says, I do not box like a boxer beating the air. Someone who's shadow boxing. He's got a purpose in what he's doing. He is in a real spiritual fight. You and I are in a real spiritual fight. It's real. And he says, because of that, I run with purpose every single step that I take. You know, tomorrow morning, when you wake up, God, today, this is your day. This is the day that the Lord's made. And whatever I do, whether it seems big and exciting, or maybe small and insignificant, God, I'm going to find purpose in this because I'm going to do it for your glory. I'm not running like a man running aimlessly. I'm running with purpose with every step. Because God, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to be directed by your Spirit. I'm going to be empowered by your word. And God, I'm going to love people everywhere I go. You're going to look up and you're going to say, God, when I walk into a room, the Spirit of God walks in the room with me. I'm going to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. Do you know the difference between the two? Thermostat controls the temperature. Thermometer reads the temperature. We need to be those that control the temperature. When we walk into the room, we change the climate. I'm a people lover, God, and I'm choosing to find purpose in this. I'm doing this for your glory. When I walk into a dark room, guess what happens? It gets lit up because I have the light with me. There's nowhere that I go that I don't go on purpose, because today I am here as an ambassador of the Most High God, and that is the highest ranking diplomat sent from heaven to earth to represent the goodness and the love and the grace of God. I work hard, but it's not me doing the work. It's the grace of God in me that's getting it done. Whatever you do, when you're driving your kids all over town, right? You do it for the glory of God. When you're fighting to hold your marriage together, you do it for the glory of God. When you're caring for your aging parents, do it for the glory of God. When you feel like there's something more, you're stuck in a job that you don't love, you're battling cancer, you're trying to pay down debt, you're doing what you do for the glory of God, recognizing His purpose in this moment. And somehow, passion always follows purpose. You see, the prize is not when you get the promotion. The prize isn't when you get that car that you've been waiting on. The prize isn't when you get to go to the beach or the mountains or to that place where that big mouse is. Do you get that? Do I have to say it? Folks, the prize is now. The prize is here. This is a day that the Lord has made, and because of the grace of God, I will rejoice and I will be glad in it. You see, life isn't about me. It's not about indulging myself. It's not about treating myself. It's about denying myself. And when I deny myself, guess what happens? Go back to week number 1. What happens when we deny ourselves? We become more bold to speak to people about Jesus, because if you remember, we speak boldly about what we believe deeply. And because of the grace of Jesus has transformed each and every one of us, man, we cannot contain His goodness. You know, and when you start to do this, people will be amazed at how bold you are. When I'm selfless, I become extravagant in generosity. I give without holding back, because we truly believe as followers of Jesus that it is more blessed to give than to receive. Therefore, we lead the way in what I'm going to call irrational generosity. And when I'm selfless, I become a faithful servant, because serving is not something that I do. A servant is who I am. And I am a servant of the Most High God. And when I serve others, I am serving God. So that one day, when I stand before Jesus, He's going to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." He's not going to say, "Hey, thanks for serving." No. Because you are a servant, you'll be received into heaven. And when I recognize that I've been transformed by the grace of God and everything is for His glory, then whatever I do, it's not for me, but it's all for the glory of God. And I serve Him faithfully in purpose. And passion follows, because I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it all for Him. The prize is in the process. God, you're with me. Your Spirit is guiding me, and you're strengthening me, and I'm grateful in the grind. I'm finding joy in all things. I'm rejoicing always, God, because your Spirit dwells in me, and you're working in all things to do good, because of the grace of God. I think the prayer that each of us ought to have today is, God, because I'm selfless, because I'm denying myself, you're going to show me how to be grateful in the grind. And I will be grateful in the grind in whatever I do, because I'm going to do it for your glory, because you are with me no matter where I go. Grateful in the grind, because when we understand why we're doing what we do for His glory, the passion for that follows.